Tell us which guard you'd sleep with. She freezes. Every German woman in that line freezes. April 1945. A processing center somewhere in the American zone. The walls are gray concrete. The floor is wet from muddy boots. The air smells like diesel and harsh disinfectant. 12 women. Wehrmacht auxiliaries. Captured 3 days ago near the Rhine. They haven't eaten since yesterday. They haven't slept since the transport trucks. And now an American MP stands at a metal desk, clipboard in hand, reading a question that sounds like the end of everything. Over 350,000 German POWs in U.S. custody by this point, but less than 1% are women. These 12 are among them. 12 out of hundreds of thousands. Uns wurde gesagt, die Amerikaner sind schlimmer als die Russen. We were told the Americans are worse than the Russians. That's what the propaganda pamphlet said. That's what the officers whispered before the retreat. That's what every woman in this line believes right now. The question isn't hypothetical. It's a selection, a menu of horrors. Helga's hands won't stop shaking. She's 23, a radio operator from Dresden. She's never held a weapon, and now she's being asked to choose which American soldier she'll be handed over to. But wait. The interpreter hasn't spoken yet. The MP is reading directly from a printed card, stumbling through German phonetics like a tourist ordering food in a foreign restaurant. Bei welchem Wachposten werden Sie schlafen? Helga's brain tries to process. Wachposten, guard post. Schlafen, sleep. The words blur together. She hears what she's been trained to expect. What every captured woman expects. The woman beside her starts crying, silently, shoulders shaking, no sound escaping. Boots scrape across wet concrete. Someone coughs. The clipboard clicks against the desk. Quick question, comment below. What city are you watching from right now? And what time is it? I want to see how far this moment travels tonight, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about enemies and the stories we tell ourselves about war. The MP looks up, confused, frustrated. Why won't they answer a simple logistics question? He waves the interpreter forward, a young private with glasses, nervous, sweating despite the cold. He clears his throat, opens his mouth to translate, but the way he says it confirms what they already believe. This is the selection they were warned about. But then the interpreter steps forward and speaks again, and what he says doesn't clarify anything. It makes everything worse. The interpreter's German is clumsy, broken, wrong. He tries again, slower this time. But fear doesn't wait for grammar lessons. Fear doesn't care about syntax or good intentions. Wachposten, guard section. Schlafen, where you sleep. Which guard section will your sleeping quarters be assigned to? That's what he means. That's what the question actually asks. Zone, assignment, barracks allocation, standard intake procedure documented in Army Regulation 633-120. But Helga doesn't hear bureaucracy. None of them do. They hear selection. Wir haben jedes Wort als Bedrohung gehört. We heard every word as a threat. 73% of German POWs later reported that their initial terror of American captors came directly from Wehrmacht propaganda, pamphlets that described American soldiers as savage, undisciplined, dangerous to women in ways the literature couldn't print openly. Every woman in this line has read those pamphlets. The interpreter stumbles through his explanation again. His voice cracks. He's 20 years old, maybe 21. A college kid from Wisconsin who took German as an elective because he thought it would be easy. He has no idea what's happening inside their heads. It's about which zone. Guard post section, for processing. His words bounce off walls of terror built by months of relentless propaganda. Helga's stomach drops. The woman beside her grabs her arm, fingernails digging into skin. The MP behind the desk sighs loudly, checks his watch. They've got 47 more prisoners to process before dinner. This is taking far too long. He says something to the interpreter, sharp, impatient, annoyed. The interpreter nods, turns back to the women. Please, line up against the wall, facing the wall, for the next procedure. The next procedure. Helga's throat tightens. She tastes metal, blood. She's bitten the inside of her cheek without realizing. This is it. This is what they warned about. First the question, then the wall. The women shuffle forward, feet dragging on wet concrete. Someone whimpers, someone prays. 12 backs against cold tile. 12 women facing gray wall. 12 hearts hammering so loud the sound fills the room. Behind them, footsteps, male voices, equipment being moved, metal scraping against metal, hoses uncoiling on concrete. Someone says something in English. A laugh, then silence. Helga closes her eyes, presses palms flat against cold tile, waits for hands, waits for violence. Then the MP says 2 words. Face the wall. They're already facing it, but now they can't see what's coming. And that's worse. 12 women. Backs to the room. Palms pressed against cold tiles that smell like bleach and old water. Behind them, sounds. Every sound a confirmation. Metal clattering, boots shuffling. Something heavy being dragged across concrete. A hose, definitely a hose, being uncoiled and stretched across the floor. Helga's mind races through everything she's been told. The pamphlets, the whispered warnings, the stories that traveled through the ranks like disease. Das ist es. Das haben sie uns angetan. This is it. This is what they do. US POW protocol required 100% delousing of incoming prisoners within 24 hours. Typhus prevention. Non-negotiable. Army Medical Regulation. 40 FAR 205 Section 8, Paragraph 3. But nobody told them that. Nobody explained. To the Americans, this was Tuesday. Standard hygiene processing. Same procedure they'd run on 12,000 prisoners this month alone. To the women facing the wall, this was the beginning of the end. Helga hears a valve turning, pressure building, the hiss of something mechanical warming up. Her fingers curl against the tile. Her nails scrape. Someone down the line starts hyperventilating, short, sharp breaths that echo off concrete walls. The MP shouts something, an order. The interpreter translates, but his voice is drowned by the sound of pressurized equipment activating. Close your eyes. Don't breathe in. Don't breathe in. Helga's legs nearly buckle. This is gas. It has to be gas. Her grandmother told stories about the last war, about what soldiers do to women, about what armies do when no one's watching. The American soldiers behind them aren't even paying attention. They're chatting about something. Baseball, maybe. A card game later tonight. One of them laughs at a joke. Laughing. While doing this. That's what breaks her. Not the fear, the casual laughter. She braces for pain, for burning, for the end. The spray hits her back, cold, powdery. It coats her shoulders, her neck, the back of her head. It smells like chemicals, sharp and medicinal, but not like death. Not like the gas she imagined. The woman next to her flinches violently, then freezes, then waits. Nothing hurts. No hands grab them. No violence follows. The spray continues down the line. Methodical, impersonal, routine. One of the American soldiers yawns. Actually yawns. Helga's brain can't process what's happening, or rather, what's not happening. The spraying stops. Silence fills the room like held breath. And then a voice. Female. American accent. Clothes are ready. Room 2. Get dressed. Get dressed? She opens her eyes, and what she sees next makes no sense at all. She opens her eyes, turns her head, looks at her own shoulder. White powder, everywhere. It coats her uniform like flour. Her hair is dusted with it. Her arms, her neck, the fabric of her collar, all covered in fine chemical particles that smell like disinfectant and something sharper. Industrial, DDT, dichlorodiphenyltrichloroethane, standard delousing agent, approved by the Army Medical Corps in 1943, applied to over 3 million German POWs during the war. Documented deaths from the procedure, 0. But Helga doesn't know any of that. None of them do. Ich dachte es sei Gas. Ich wartete darauf zu sterben. I thought it was gas. I waited to die. The woman beside her, Margaret, a supply clerk from Hamburg, is staring at her own powder-covered hands like she's never seen them before. Her mouth moves, but no words come out. Her brain is stuck in a loop, trying to reconcile expectation with reality. They expected assault. They got pesticide. They expected violence. They got hygiene protocol. The American soldiers are already packing up, coiling hoses, checking valves. One of them pulls out a clipboard and marks something. Another checks his watch and mutters about mess hall closing soon. They don't look at the women, not with hunger, not with cruelty, not with anything at all. Just work, just routine, just another shift at the processing center. Helga's hands are shaking, but not from fear now, from something else, something she can't name, something that feels like the ground shifting beneath her feet. A door opens on the far side of the room. A woman steps through. American uniform, Red Cross armband on her sleeve. She's carrying a stack of folded clothes, steam rising from the fabric. "Room 2, she says in accented German. "Your clothes, clean, warm." Clean and warm. The words don't compute. Helga stares at the steam rising from the fabric pile. Her own uniform has been gone for less than 30 minutes, and now it's back. Pressed, sterilized, folded. Standard processing time, 4 hours. Clothes heat sterilized at 104 degrees Fahrenheit. All personal items cataloged and returned per Army Regulation 198. The Red Cross woman sets the clothes on a bench, points to changing screens set up in the corner, then leaves, doesn't look back, doesn't watch. Helga walks forward on legs that don't feel like her own. Her hand touches the warm wool of her uniform, still hers, still intact, still. She doesn't finish the thought, because if this is real, then everything else was a lie, and that terrifies her more than the wall. Room 2. Their clothes are folded on wooden benches, neat stacks, perfect creases, steam still rising from the fabric. Helga picks up her uniform jacket. It's warm, warmer than it's been since she was issued it 18 months ago. The wool smells like soap and hot metal. The buttons are still there. The pocket still holds her grandmother's photograph. Nobody took anything. Meine Kleider waren sauberer als seit Stalingrad. My clothes were cleaner than they'd been since Stalingrad. Standard processing time, 4 hours. Clothes returned heat sterilized at 104 degrees Fahrenheit. All personal items cataloged, recorded, and returned according to Geneva Convention requirements and Army Protocol 1-90-8, Section 12. The women dress in silence. Nobody speaks. Nobody knows what to say. Margaret buttons her jacket with trembling fingers. Her eyes keep darting to the door, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the real horror to begin. This must be the calm before something worse, but nothing worse comes. The Red Cross worker returns with cups of hot coffee. Real coffee. American coffee. It tastes like nothing Helga has drunk in 2 years. She holds the tin cup with both hands, feeling warmth spread through her palms, and tries to understand what's happening. A female nurse enters with blankets, gray wool, clean. She speaks no German. They speak no English. But she moves slowly, hands always visible, and sets blankets on each bunk, one by one. No rush, no threat. When she leaves, she smiles. A small, tired smile. Like this is normal. Like this is Tuesday. Helga sits on her bunk, blanket in her lap, coffee cooling in her hands. The uniform on her body smells like industrial soap and safety. One of the younger women, Anna, barely 19, finally speaks. I don't understand. Nobody responds, because nobody understands. Everything they were told, every pamphlet, every warning, every whispered horror story that kept them awake on transport trucks. Lies, or were the Americans just waiting? Building trust before the betrayal. Helga's brain won't stop cycling through possibilities. This could be psychological warfare. Soften them up, make them relax, then strike. But the nurse is already gone. The door is unlocked. The coffee is real. She looks at the blanket in her hands. Gray wool. U.S. Army issue. Clean. One question keeps circling her exhausted mind. If this is how enemies treat prisoners, then what does that make her own army? The thought is too large, too dangerous, so she buries it. For now. But one woman can't let go of the original question. She grabs the interpreter's sleeve the next morning. Which guard? What did that actually mean? The interpreter sighs, pulls a folded paper from his pocket, unfolds it. A map, simple, hand-drawn, 4 zones marked with numbers, guard posts circled in red ink at each corner. Guard sections, he says, points at the map. 1, 2, 3, 4. Helga stares at the paper, her brain still moving slowly, still fighting through fog of fear that hasn't fully lifted. The question was about zones. Which zone would your barracks be assigned to? Section 3 is women's quarters, farthest from the male POW compounds. Es war nur Bürokratie. Wir waren bereit zu sterben, für Bürokratie. It was just bureaucracy. We were ready to die for bureaucracy. Geneva Convention Article 25. Women POWs must be housed separately from men with female supervision present at all times. Minimum separation distance, 50 meters. U.S. compliance rate in European theater camps, 97%. The question wasn't which guard will you sleep with. It was which guard section will your sleeping quarters be in. Paperwork, logistics, administrative processing. The interpreter folds the map, looks at her with something like sympathy, or maybe pity. He's been doing this for months. He's seen this confusion before, 100 times, 1,000. The MP didn't know how it sounded, he says. He just read from the card. Helga looks at the map in his hands. Such a simple thing. 4 zones, 12 bunks, standard allocation procedure, and they were ready to die over it. The woman beside her, Margaret, starts crying. Not fear this time, something else. Relief mixed with something darker. Grief, maybe. For the terror that didn't need to exist. For the nights of propaganda that built walls inside their minds. Helga puts a hand on her shoulder. Says nothing. There's nothing to say. That night, in Section 3, none of them sleep. They lie on bunks with unlocked doors and clean blankets and full stomachs, fuller than they've been in months, and stare at ceilings that don't make sense. At 300 hours, someone knocks. Every woman sits up, hearts hammering. Here it comes. This is when it happens. 3 soft taps, then a voice. Female, American accent. Red Cross, I have blankets. Helga's hands curl around her existing blanket, the one she's been clutching for hours. The door opens slowly. A woman's silhouette. hands visible, holding wool. More blankets. Because the nights are cold. Because that's protocol. Because someone decided prisoners should be warm. Helga watches her set the blankets down and leave without a word. The door clicks shut, and the question returns, louder than before. If this is the enemy, who told her otherwise? The knock came soft. 3 taps. Then a woman's voice. Blankets delivered without demand. Morning arrives gray and cold. The women eat breakfast. Powdered eggs, toast, coffee, served by American soldiers who don't look at them twice. Just trays, just routine, just another meal in a war full of them. Helga waits until the interpreter returns, grabs his sleeve before he can leave. Why? The question comes out cracked, desperate. She hasn't slept in 36 hours. Her mind is a wreck of fear and confusion and something that might be the beginning of understanding. Why didn't they tell us what was happening? The wall, the spray, the question. Why didn't anyone explain? The interpreter stops, looks at her, really looks. For the first time, she notices the exhaustion in his own eyes. He's been doing this for months, processing terrified prisoners who expect monsters and find bureaucracy instead. Wir hätten es nicht geglaubt, selbst wenn sie es erklärt hätten. We wouldn't have believed them even if they'd explained. He says it in German, slowly, like he's thought about this before. They didn't think you'd be scared, he adds. They didn't know what you'd been told. To them, this is routine. Standard processing happens 100 times a day across every camp in the zone. Only 12% of German POWs spoke English. Interpreter ratio in 1945, 1 per 200 prisoners. Communication gaps weren't the exception. They were the rule. Helga stares at him, trying to absorb words that rewrite everything. But the pamphlets, lies, he says simply. Your officers lied to you, to keep you fighting, to keep you scared of surrender. The words land like physical blows. Her own army, her own officers, her own country. They built the terror that almost destroyed her, not the Americans. Margaret appears beside her, face pale, eyes red from crying and not sleeping. The blanket woman last night, she says quietly. She came back at 500, brought extra socks, didn't say anything, just left them. Extra socks, because feet get cold, because someone thought of it. Helga looks at the wool blanket still clutched in her hands. Gray, rough, U.S. Army issue, standard prisoner allocation. She's had it for less than 18 hours. But already, she knows she'll keep it forever. Not because it's valuable, but because of what it represents. The first time in years, that someone treated her like a human being instead of a number. 40 years later, when a journalist asks why she still has it, her answer will rewrite everything. 1987. Freiburg, Germany. A small apartment filled with 40 years of living. Helga is 71 years old. White hair, steady hands, eyes that have seen more than most people could imagine. In her living room, there's a glass case. Inside the case, a folded gray blanket. U.S. Army issue. Wool. Worn at the edges now. But clean. Always clean. A journalist sits across from her. Notepad ready, recorder running. Why did you keep it? Helga looks at the blanket. Touches the glass with one finger. Die Frage hat uns gebrochen, aber die Antwort hat uns gerettet. The question broke us, but the answer saved us. She pauses, collects herself. The memory still vivid after 4 decades. Because that night, I expected to die. I expected everything the pamphlets promised, every horror, every violation. I faced that wall convinced I would never see morning. Her voice steadies. And instead, A woman I couldn't understand gave me something warm and walked away. No explanation, no demand, no cruelty, just warmth. Of the 12 women processed that day in April 1945, 8 survived the war. 3 wrote memoirs. All 3 mentioned the blanket. All 3 mentioned the question that nearly destroyed them, and the answer that rebuilt something broken inside. That was the first time, Helga says, I was treated like a human being, not a soldier, not an enemy, not a number on a processing form, a human. The journalist writes it down, asks the follow-up question everyone wants answered. Do you forgive the Americans for the fear they caused? Helga shakes her head, not in denial, in correction. The Americans didn't cause the fear. My own officers did. My own country did. They planted it inside me years before I ever saw an American soldier. The propaganda, the lies, the horror stories designed to keep us fighting. She taps the glass case. This blanket is proof. Proof that everything I believed was manufactured. That the monsters I expected were paper constructions built by men who never intended to face them themselves. The journalist closes his notebook. The interview is over. But one question lingers. If you were in her position, terrified, freezing, convinced the worst was coming, would you have trusted the explanation? Would you have given up the fear? Or would it have won? In war, the most dangerous weapon isn't the one they carry. It's the one they plant in your mind before you ever meet them. Which guard would you sleep with? The question that shattered 12 women on a cold April morning. And the answer, a blanket, a bureaucracy, a truth too late, that put them back together.